My name is Renata. I'm 39, a cardiothoracic surgeon, the oldest of two girls, and the one who spent her whole life holding everything together with her bare hands. The day I pulled into that driveway, the one belonging to the house I'd spent 6 months secretly buying and furnishing, I had a lemon pound cake in a white box on the passenger seat, and a smile I'd been saving for years. I thought I had finally done it. I thought I had finally given them the one thing they'd never had: peace. I was wrong. But before I tell you how all of it unfolded, like and subscribe, and drop a comment. I genuinely want to know where you're watching from. Now, let me start from the beginning. I grew up in a 2-bedroom rental in Akron, Ohio. The carpet was the color of old mustard, and the radiator knocked every night like someone demanding entry. Money in our house wasn't discussed, it was felt. You felt it in the way my mother, Diane, went still when the phone rang after 7 o'clock. You felt it when my father, Gerald, laughed too loud at nothing, the way he always did when things were bad. I learned to read their silences before I could read chapter books. It's just a slow month, my dad would say, standing at the kitchen counter. Not eating, just standing. He worked HVAC, back-breaking work, seasonal and unpredictable. My mother cleaned houses. Together they made just enough to stay one bad month away from disaster. I became the barometer of our home. I knew by the sound of my father's boots on the porch steps what kind of night we were walking into. My sister, Camille, was 3 years younger and had a completely different strategy for surviving our family. While I went invisible and useful, she went loud. She cried until she got what she wanted. She performed distress so convincingly that our exhausted parents always gave in, because it was easier to say yes than to manage another hour of screaming. I remember my 11th birthday. I'd asked for a microscope kit. Nothing expensive. Just a beginner set. I'd seen it at the science fair and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I heard my parents whispering, "We just can't right now, Jerry." 2 days before my birthday, Camille melted down because she needed the right sneakers for a school picture. She cried for 4 hours straight. My parents bought the sneakers. On my birthday, there was a grocery store cake and a card. "You understand, Renata. You're the strong one. She's sensitive." And there it was, the sentence that shaped the next 3 decades of my life. I studied like my life depended on it, because it did. I worked my way through college on scholarships and double shifts at a diner outside campus. I went to medical school on sheer stubbornness. I became a cardiothoracic surgeon. I fixed hearts for a living, which felt appropriate, because mine had been quietly breaking for years. My apartment was clean, controlled, quiet. White walls. A bank account that didn't terrify me. No red envelopes under the mattress. I'd done that as a child. Hiding the bills so my mother wouldn't cry. I was done hiding things. But the past doesn't stay hidden just because you grow up. I'd call home, and my dad would cough that deep rattling cough and say, "We're fine. We're figuring it out." My mother's voice was still small, still wound tight. They were in their early 60s and still renting, still surviving on the edge. I went to visit them 8 months before their 40th anniversary. My mother tried to slip a pharmacy bag behind the toaster before I noticed. It was Dad's blood pressure medication. The copay had tripled. "We'll work it out, sweetheart." That phrase. I had heard it my entire childhood. It meant, we have no idea what to do. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't going to throw them a party or book a dinner cruise. I was going to extract them from that life entirely. I was going to give them something that couldn't be taken away by a bad month or a late check. A foundation. A home that was entirely, irrevocably theirs. It took me 5 months of searching. I wasn't looking for something grand. I was looking for something solid. I found it in a small community in northern Michigan, right on the edge of a quiet lake. A 3-bedroom craftsman cottage with a wide front porch, a kitchen with big windows, and a dock where my dad could sit and fish and not think about a single bill. It was $380,000. I paid cash. I put the deed in their names. I spent 3 days there alone before I told them a word. I hired painters. I bought a sofa in the softest gray fabric I could find. I bought a real recliner, one with lumbar support for my dad. I drove to 4 different stores to fill that kitchen exactly the way I'd always wanted them to have it. The good orange juice, the dark roast coffee, fresh flowers, heavy towels, 2 bathrobes hanging on the back of the bathroom door. I stocked the medicine cabinet with a full 3-month supply of my father's prescriptions. I wanted him to open that cabinet and see abundance, not scarcity. In the kitchen junk drawer, I left a small cedar box. Inside, on an index card in my own handwriting, I wrote, "For slow mornings, good coffee, and all the rest you've earned. Happy 40th. I love you more than I know how to say. Renata." My hands shook the whole time I wrote it. The reveal was the most nervous I have ever been, and I've had my hands inside open chests. I drove to Akron and knocked on their door. "I'm taking you to dinner up north. Pack an overnight bag. Trust me. My dad, stubborn, suspicious of surprises because surprises had always meant bad news, said, Renata, what is this really about? Just get in the car, Dad. When I turned down the gravel lane and pulled up to the cottage, the evening light was hitting the lake, and the windows were glowing gold. My mother put her hand over her mouth. My father went completely still. Whose house is this? Mom whispered. Yours, I said. Happy anniversary. My dad wouldn't take the keys. He thought I was playing a cruel joke. When I finally guided his hands to the lock, and the door swung open, and my mother walked into that kitchen and saw the full refrigerator and the flower arrangement on the table and the view of the lake through the window, she didn't just cry. She collapsed into a chair and held her face in her hands and wept from somewhere so deep inside herself it didn't even sound like her. My father walked from room to room touching the walls. He ran his hand up the banister. He stood at the back window and looked at the dock for a long time. It's solid, he said quietly. He wasn't talking about the house. That first night we sat on the porch with blankets and watched the stars come out over the water. My parents held hands. Nobody said much. My mother whispered, I keep waiting for someone to tell us to leave. Nobody's coming, Mom. It's yours. I don't know this feeling, she said. This still feeling. My father was quiet for a moment. Then, I haven't slept through the night in 20 years. I think I might tonight. That peace lasted exactly 53 hours. I was mid-chart at the hospital when Mom called. I saw her name and smiled. The last 2 days had been a stream of happy, bewildered texts. A family of ducks on the dock. Gerald fell asleep in the recliner at 2 in the afternoon. Made blueberry muffins. The house smells amazing. Mom! How's the lake? Silence. Not the good kind, Camille called. Her voice was small. The old voice. She heard about the house, I think, from your Aunt Vera. She's so happy for us, Renata. She's just so excited. She wants to bring the kids to see it. Just for an afternoon. To celebrate with us. I closed my eyes. I knew what just an afternoon meant with Camille. It was the same as just a few minutes and just until we get back on our feet. It was a door she was asking permission to open. Once open, she would not close it herself. Mom, you just got there. You don't owe anyone a visit yet. You're allowed to settle. Oh, don't be silly. It's family. She hung up before I could push further. The dread in my chest was a familiar old weight. I called my dad the next morning. He answered in a strained half-whisper. Dad, is Camille there? Yes. Her and Brendan. They brought steaks. They're staying for dinner. I could hear my brother-in-law Brendan in the background, that too loud, entitled bark of his. Hey, Jerry, where do you keep the good stuff? Don't hold out on me. Dad, where are you sleeping? Pause. They're Renata. I have to go. He hung up. The text came the next morning at 6:15 from my mother. Camille and the boys are staying a few more days. They love it so much. They're helping us unpack. I had unpacked everything. There was nothing to unpack. I got in my car. The driveway of the cottage looked like a campground explosion. Lawn chairs nobody owned were scattered on the grass. A deflated pool float was draped across the porch railing. 2 empty bottles were on the steps. The front door was open, banging lightly against the frame. Inside, the smell of stale beer and old fast food. My mother was at the kitchen sink gripping a dish towel. Back to me. Shoulders locked. My father was in a hard kitchen chair pulled away from the table, looking shrunken. His hands were shaking on his knees. Camille was on the new sofa, feet up, shoes on, phone in hand. Not looking up. Her husband Brendan, wearing my father's bathrobe, was in the kitchen on the phone, beer in hand. Yeah, man, it's unreal. Right on the water. My wife's sister bought it for her parents. We're set for the whole summer, bro. He saw me. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. Oh. Renata, he waved with the beer can. Relax, we're just getting settled. Camille finally looked up. It's a family home, she said, voice bored. Family shares. My father. Quietly. Almost to himself. I don't think this is what Renata wanted. Brendan turned to him and pointed. This is our house too, old man. If you don't like it, you can go for a walk. Camille laughed. I set the lemon pound cake on the counter. The room went completely still. Here's what you need to understand about Camille. She isn't cruel the way a stranger is cruel. She's cruel the way family is cruel, with the full context of your soft spots. Your childhood shame. The exact pitch of guilt that will unlock you. She had weaponized my parents' love for 40 years. She learned early that her feelings were leverage. She learned that if she cried long enough, she won. She learned that I would always pick up the wreckage she left behind. I paid for her kids' dental work. I found out later she'd spent that money on a girls' trip to Savannah and called me afterward in a panic because they were behind on rent. I wired her money for a security deposit emergency. Her husband had quit his job voluntarily a month before that call. They waited, specifically and deliberately, until it became a crisis because they knew I couldn't say no to a crisis. I wasn't her sister. I was a utility. When they heard about the cottage, they didn't see a gift for two tired, deserving people. They saw the largest payout I'd ever provided. I know this because of what I found later, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I put my bag on the counter next to the cake. I opened it. I laid 5 documents on the coffee table in front of Brendan and Camille. Camille. Is this, are you suing us? This, I said, tapping the first page, is the deed. The owners are Gerald and Diane Marsh. Not Camille. Not Brendan. Brendan. It's just paper. This is the certificate of trust. The Gerald and Diane Marsh Home Trust. I am the trustee. This property cannot be sold, rented, or mortgaged without my signature. Any non-owner staying more than 72 hours without my written approval is in violation. That window closed this morning. Camille's face went slack. This, I said, laying down the 3rd page, is a verbo listing you created yesterday. The title she'd written, Charming Lakeside Retreat Walk to Water. $295. Night. My mother made a sound I will never forget. Soft, wounded. You were going to rent our house? Dad asked. He looked at Camille the way you look at something you no longer recognize. I was trying to help cover the costs. I paid the property taxes 5 years in advance, I said. I paid the utilities 12 months forward. What costs, Camille? I laid down the 4th page. It was a Venmo record showing her friends had already paid deposits. She'd booked the entire summer out. She'd planned to move our parents into the smallest bedroom and charge strangers to sleep in their own home. Brendan puffed up his chest. You know what? This is family money. You act like you're the only one who matters in this family. We'll establish residency. You'll have to evict us. That takes months. We'll see you in court. He actually smiled. I looked at him, this man who had never worked a full year straight, who wore my father's robe in a house he contributed nothing to, and I felt completely, utterly calm. I picked up my phone. I turned the screen toward him. This is a drafted email to the Verbo Trust and Safety Team. Fraudulent listing. Non-owner. Already filled out, ready to send. Your account will be suspended and all collected funds reversed. His smile flickered. This is an email to the County Property Authority. Subject. Potential elder financial exploitation. It requests a welfare check on Gerald and Diane Marsh, and flags an attempt to monetize an irrevocable trust without trustee consent. And this, I said, showing him my texts, is a conversation with a locksmith named Marcus. He's parked on the street right now. He is waiting for my message. Brendan's chest deflated. You have 5 minutes, I said. If you're not in your car, I send everything and call the non-emergency police line for trespassing. Marcus rekeys the house whether you're inside or outside. Mom, Camille said, pivoting fast, her voice going soft and trembling. Tell her she can't do this. We're family. The kids. My mother was very still on the sofa. She looked at Camille. She looked at the muddy floor. She looked at the open cabinet in the kitchen, where Camille had already started pulling out the food I'd bought. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were full of tears. But they were different tears. They weren't the thin, frightened tears of my whole childhood. Something had shifted behind them, something that looked, for the first time, like resolve. She took a slow breath. Do what you need to, Renata. I pressed send. Camille's response was pure theater. She wailed. She sank to her knees on the ruined entryway rug and screamed that I was a monster, that she had nowhere to go, that I was putting children on the street. Brendan went purple and paced and threatened lawyers he didn't have. Marcus came. He was calm and professional and completely unbothered by any of it. He worked his way through the house with his toolbox, whistling quietly. And Brendan's dominance display meant absolutely nothing to him. The packing was chaotic and destructive and loud. Camille grabbed the coffee and the pasta from the pantry. She took the new kettle. She threw the good towels on the floor and smirked at me. Take them, I said. They're just things. She wanted a fight. I would not give her one. They were gone within 2 hours. As their car reached the end of the lane, Camille turned and looked at me through the window. Not with sadness. Not with regret. With pure, clean hatred. The look of someone furious at being stopped. I felt nothing but relief. Marcus handed me 4 new keys and a recoded garage remote. I tipped him well. He got in his van and drove away. I closed the front door, slid the new deadbolt into place. The click was the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. My mother cried in a way I'd never heard before, a deep, releasing sob, like something that had been wound tight for decades finally letting go. My father went out to the porch. I gave him space, then went and stood beside him. I should have said something, he said. I'm her father. I should have protected your mother. You did the hardest thing, Dad. You let go. You let me handle it. You asked for help. I paused. That was the strong part. He reached over and put his hand on my arm. He didn't say anything else. The next morning, I opened every window. Cold, clean lake air moved through the whole house. I cleaned until 2 in the morning, scrubbing the floors on my hands and knees, washing the sofa cushions outside on the porch, throwing out the ruined entry rug. 4 hours of reclaiming a sanctuary. When I was done, I sat on the clean sofa in the quiet house, and I finally cried. The noise came the next day. 27 missed calls. A Facebook post with a bad photo of me. A caption about how I'd thrown my sister and her babies onto the street. And 300 comments from strangers calling me a monster. A cease and desist letter from Brendan, written in red bold text with 3 typos in the subject line. I read it once. I deleted it. I blocked both of them. I blocked Aunt Vera. I did not defend myself online. I did not post my side. I did not explain. The people who matter already knew. A month later, I drove up on a Friday, without calling ahead. I stood outside the cottage, in the early dark. Through the kitchen window, I could see my mother at the table doing a puzzle. A mug beside her. My father was in his chair, feet up, reading. The lamp I'd bought was on. The house was quiet and warm and lit from within. I stood there for a long time before I went in. My mother had bought herself a new kettle, a bright red one. My dad had oiled a squeaky hinge and repainted a small spot on the porch railing. They were tending to something. They were taking ownership. We sat on the dock that evening with mugs of tea and watched the last light leave the water. I baked 4 batches of cookies this week, my mother said. Just because I could. My father didn't say anything. He just looked at the water and breathed. People online still say I destroyed my family. My aunt still won't take my calls. Camille's social media is a running documentary of her victimhood. They're wrong. I didn't destroy my family. I stopped funding its dysfunction. I stopped answering the knock on the door that had been draining me my entire life. Love is not writing a check every time someone manufactures a crisis. Love is not being the perpetual shock absorber for other people's choices. Love is not saying yes to chaos because real love is a house with new locks, clean floors, a full medicine cabinet, and 2 people who can finally, for the first time in 40 years, breathe. If you have ever had to protect someone's peace, even from the people they love most, leave a comment below. I want to hear your story. And if this resonated with you, please share it. Someone out there needs to know it's okay to lock the door. Subscribe for more stories. New video every week.